when I started to teach human nutrition, particularly to medical students first, we used to talk about malnutrition in technical terms. We used a term, for example, kwashiorkor. Kwashiorkor is where you have swollen faces, swollen bellies, swollen limbs, all caused by the inappropriate accumulation of water under the skin. The second technical term we had was marasmus. This was for children that were skin and bone. You could see the outline of their skull. You could see the long arms. You could count their ribs. And we even argued as to whether or not there was a halfway house between marasmus and kwashiorkor called marasmic kwashiorkor. Today, we use the term hunger. And we use it for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a very emotive term. It's not a medical term. It's a term we can all understand. And it's a term which is preferred nowadays. The statisticians tell me that 1 billion people go to bed every night hungry. 1 billion people. 1/6 of the Earth's population. Now that translates into unfortunate deaths. And the best way I can give you of statistics for childhood malnutrition is the following. If 30 jumbo jets were to crash every day, fully laden with passengers, killing all on board, that's the number of kids that die every day from hunger. Or if you take John Lennon's iconic song, Imagine, and he asked us to imagine a world of peace and harmony and tranquility and so forth. In the 3 minutes and 8 seconds it takes for John Lennon to sing his song, 45 children die. So remember those two statistics. They're easy to remember. Now, in the last few years, there's been a complete rechange in the way we think about malnutrition and its treatment, and about how we tackle hunger. And the focus now has come squarely down on what's called the first 1,000 days, the 40 weeks of pregnancy and the first 2 years of life. If you do the maths, it's about 1,000 days. And that has transformed the way we look at the need to solve the problem of malnutrition and the processes which organizations like the United Nations need to put in place to do it. And I'll cover both of those. The first 1,000 days covers pregnancy, and then breastfeeding, and then weaning. And that's the three I'll talk about quickly. In terms of pregnancy, you inherit your genes from your mother and father, and there's no changing those. But you can change the extent to which those genes are expressed. So let me explain it. If a forensic scientist took a cell from that nose and that ear and did the DNA sequencing, they would be identical. But in that nose, the genes for sound are turned off, and in that ear, the genes for smell are turned off, but they're there. Now, during pregnancy, when you have a malnourished mother or a poorly nourished mother, changes will be made to the expression of genes of the child, and many organs will be affected that in the long term will do damage. But the most important impact will be the bone growth will be slowed down. So you'll have a smaller baby. And that's a disadvantage straight away for that infant. But the one thing that won't happen, its brain will not be affected. Nature looks after the brain. Now, the problem arises when the baby is born. Because if you want to consider, for example, a foal is born hardwired. Within a half an hour, it's running with the herd. It knows exactly what to do. Everything a horse needs to do, it knows what to do. It doesn't need to learn anything. In contrast, a child born in Dublin, or Darfur, or Detroit, or Dubai, they need to learn different languages. They need to learn different cultures, be familiar with different foods, have different religions, different music, different alphabets, different literature. And so they can't be born hardwired. They have to be born loose-wired. So the brain after birth goes through a considerable level of development. And if you get it wrong, it's wrong for life. So you've got a 2-year window to get it right. If you don't get it right, it's wrong for life. Now, in the growth of a brain, in a child just born and up to about 6 months of age, 75% of all its calories go upstairs to the brain. By 5, it's fallen to 50%, and for all of you guys, it's about 25%. Just as supercomputers absorb huge amounts of energy, our brain, which is the biggest supercomputer of all, absorbs a huge amount of energy to keep it going. Now, in order to feed this growing brain, particularly in the first 2 years of life, there are two critical periods after birth. One is breastfeeding. By far, the best food for an infant is breastfeeding exclusively for 6 months, the first 6 months of life. Let me give you just 3 examples of what it does. A mother walking around the place will encounter bacteria and foreign bodies and all sorts of things, and she will develop antibodies to these. The antibodies emerge in the breast milk, the child drinks, and effectively speaking, as I have often described it, they get an antiseptic paint lining their gut. So their immune system is boosted phenomenally. Iron is another nutrient that's very important for the brain postnatally, because the brain grows in size and complexity. Now, the iron that's present in breast milk, even though it's in lower concentration than in, say, cow's milk, it is highly available. Very, very much available to the young baby. So that's another advantage. And then finally, breast milk contains carbohydrates in small concentrations that pass down the gut, get into the large gut, and foster a very protective, immune protective microflora. So in every respect, it's ideal. Regrettably, only about 37% of kids globally now are breastfed. And Ireland, I'm sad to say, has the lowest rate of breastfeeding in the OECD, which is a shame. Now, the next critical period for the child will be weaning. And this is a really dangerous time because it's going to move away from the sterile environment of breast milk. It's going to move away from all the nutritional advantages of breast milk. And it's going to encounter feed which is nutritionally inferior to breast milk, and it's also going to encounter an environment in which that food is prepared which is not sterile. So the risk of infection rises dramatically with weaning. But if you get it right, the child will be fine. If you get it wrong, it's wrong for life. You will have physical and cognitive stunting throughout life. Now, to give you a practical example of how this can be studied, a simple study was done in which children were given a high-quality nutritional supplement or a low-quality nutritional supplement. Half the children got this in the first 2 years of life. The other half got it in years 3 and 4. 25 years later, these men were followed, and a measure of their physical ability to work and their cognitive ability to take on more complicated tasks was how much they were paid per hour. Those that received the highly nutritious food in the first 2 years of life earned four times those that received the poor one. And those children that got this nutritious feed after this critical 1,000 days, no good. They were earning a fifth of what they should have been able to earn. So we know from lots of different data that the focus on 1,000 days, the first 1,000 days, is critically important. Now, in recent years, the United Nations have taken this on board, and they have created, under Ban Ki-moon's leadership, a thing called Scaling Up Nutrition, SUN. You'll find it on the internet. Scaling Up Nutrition recognises the central importance of maternal and childhood nutrition. It recognises the economic value that will accrue to countries if they take care of the first 1,000 days. And so governments sign up to it with a number of pledges. The first pledge relates to governance. The problem in the past has been that nutrition has been partly to do with the Department of Health, partly to do with the Department of Agriculture, partly to do with the Department of Education, and so on. So no one has owned it, and everyone has lost it. So the first thing they have to sign up is for an intergovernmental committee with responsibility for maternal and childhood nutrition. The second thing they have to sign up for is an improvement of their agricultural systems and their overall maternal healthcare systems. And finally, they have to sign up to the empowerment of women. You have to remember that in sub-Saharan Africa, it's women that farm, not men. So if they are empowered, they have a greater chance of sending their kids to school and getting good meals and so forth. Now, 40 countries, as I say, have signed up to this, and it's a complete sea change to the way things had been done in the past. And it bodes well for the future with the problems, I'm afraid, that lie ahead. There are quite significant problems. At the moment, there are 1 in 6 people go to bed hungry. But in the year 2050, there'll be another 3 billion people on the planet. Now, the problem is that most of the hunger is concentrated in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. 95% of the new people on the planet will be there. They will be born into impoverished and nutritionally challenged continents. Secondly, as has been pointed out, climate change will affect agriculture. It's predicted that in these regions there will be drought and there will be floods. And the drought will come at the wrong time and the floods will come at the wrong time. And overall agricultural productivity of this group is expected to fall in these regions by 25%. And finally, they have the issue that as countries like China and India and Russia, Brazil, South Africa, as they get more and more wealthy, they will suck in foods, driving up prices, and we will be back to the situation we were a few years ago where we had riots in many cities over food shortages. So we've made progress in terms of understanding the importance of the first 1,000 days. The United Nations are doing a very good job in getting governments to enact this into their legislation and their policy. But we still have this huge problem facing us. And many of you might say, well, that's shocking and interesting and so forth, but what has it got to do with me? 3 things you need to do when you leave here. One is learn. Go on a website, governmental, non-governmental, or UN, and find out about world hunger. Find out about the issues that are involved. The second thing is contribute. You can concern are only looking for €8 a month. It's tax deductible, by the way, so it's efficient. And finally, lobby. Let your TD or parliamentarian know that you care about the value of the work that Irish Aid does and so forth, and make sure that they understand that we're happy to have some of our wealth shared with the rest of the world. We've always had hunger in society, and I don't ever think we'll have a society which is no hunger. But we have to constantly fight this problem, and I'm afraid the challenge is just going to get bigger. Thank you very much.